Well, they have that conversation. I need somebody to watch it. I'll watch it.
Here we go. We'll call this regular city council meeting to order on February 3rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Present.
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 Present. Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, is there anybody who'd like to speak under public participation this evening? Okay, for the record, there is no public participation this evening. We will start with the consent agenda. This evening it consists of 5A, payment of bills, and 5B, request from the Lincoln Park District to permit the partial closing of various city streets for the 5K run from Lincoln Park District to Scully Park on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025, from 5 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alderman Sanders made the motion. Alderman Downs second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer? Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Ms. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Okay, the next item up on the agenda this evening is 7. Approval of bid from Jaron Industries for flowable fill wall shoring and rehabilitation of exposed wall for the building at 129 South Sangamon Street in an amount not to exceed $60,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alderman Bateman made the motion. Alderwoman O'Donohue second. Discussion? Alderman Eimer.
All right, I'm sorry. It's probably going to get lengthy because I'm totally in disagreement with this. It doesn't need flowable fill, for one. Clay dirt will work. I've been through this experience with my building over Mount Pulaski. This is a complete waste of money for a building that is condemned. It's got water running through it. Don't even know if that building's gonna last, and we're gonna say 60, well, the original bid was, I believe, 48,000, wasn't it? Was that correct, 40?
I believe combined it was 48,000.
Okay, now we're up to 60. You can put dirt in this hole. I went and looked at it. Dirt can go in there just as well as anything else. My building was done that way 25 years ago, and my foundation was in worse shape than that one, and it is held.
So for clarification, the flowable fill was $20,000 and the rehabilitation of the exposed wall was $28,700.
Okay, well, we don't need flowable fill, in my opinion. We don't need to paint the wall, because when they tore the 3-story building down next to mine, they did mortar all the holes up. I agree with that. The paint thing is just a free paint job for a possibility of somebody buying a condemned building that we got water running all the way through it. I think we need to table this or look into it further or something, because this is way out of line with the taxpayers. And one thing, I've experienced it. I experienced it over 25 years ago. So I just don't agree with this, and there's no way I'm going to vote for this. So it's the more I think about it. So that's my opinion.
Alderman Bateman.
Yes, the bid is $48,000. As everybody knows, it was my suggestion not to exceed 60 because this does need to get done. It's an eyesore in my ward. I've had a lot of people ask what we're going to do with it. Afterwards, you can see 3 different colors of paint, part of a roof melted on it and stuff. So we do have to make it aesthetically pleasing for the rest of downtown, and the not to exceed 60 was so that we could get started on it and get it done so that we're not coming back for add-ons and stuff extra. So I'm assuming that this company who did the demolition was within budget. I'm assuming there'll be this in budget. Once they get started, I didn't want to have to come back and ask for more money. So we already approved the amount of money to spend for this entire project. We're well under that, so that's why I made that suggestion.
Alderman Parrott.
Just a couple questions. Wes, can you explain what a flowable fill is for all of us?
It's just a quicker setting concrete. It's going to set quicker where you can put quicker lifts in rather than form it up. And in this situation, much like the street guys use to quickly patch a hole or a breach in the street.
Okay. And, last week when I was asking some questions, a lot of times we offer a grant for facades. And if it's like $20-some thousand for the correcting of the wall or making it, an inside wall, an outside wall, and we had a buyer who wasn't, I don't know if they're still a buyer, but if they're still interested in buying, I don't think it's too tall of an ask to have them apply for a grant and pay for half of it, and the city's still going to give half of it.
It wouldn't qualify for a facade grant. This wall would not. And a structural improvement grant, perhaps it would.
Okay.
That's a cap of $7,500 on that one. Anything else, Mr. Barrett?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Eimer and then Ms.
Well,
Rolfs.
We don't need $20,000 worth of flowable fill for this project. That is good. He is correct for roads so that you can get them open. We're not opening that to drive on. That's not needed at all. Clay dirt, which we have at the street department, will work just fine. It's proven they. And as far as being inside wall, my outside wall for the last 30 years has been used to be an inside wall. It's just fine. Brick is brick. I don't have a problem with sticking some money in to fix them holes. I get that. But $20,000 of flowable fill is a waste of money. And if anybody wants to go in there and redevelop that, now they got to dig all that out. We don't even know if this building, which, has anybody been up in it to see the water running through it? I mean, it's got water running through the building is what I'm told. So, is that correct?
No,
That's not correct.
correct. It is not correct.
Why was, for the record, Mr. Woodhull, why was flowable fill recommended over clay dirt or other materials?
It's more solid.
But why does it need to be more solid? Clay door works just fine.
It was a suggestion I made that I thought of, and the structural engineers agreed and recommended it.
Will dirt work just as fine?
We have dirt. We would have already put the dirt in it.
Why
But
don't we
this
use
was
dirt? Because it will work.
You can hash it out with a structural engineer all you want. It was a suggestion,
Suggestion by you, the engineer.
the engineer.
That you
I
said
brought it up, and they said, yes, that would be a good idea.
This is
The
not a
structural
normal
engineer
practice.
has been through the
Flowable fill
property.
going in the side of a building. It's not. That's not a normal practice. So you guys do what you want, but I'm telling you, that is $20,000 of expense we do not need to do, in my opinion.
Ms. Rolfs?
Well, would the dirt be free?
Yeah,
Yes.
street department.
I believe they've used the bulk of it. I think there might be some left. I don't know if it'd be enough to do that.
It hasn't all been given
If
away.
not, we'd have to bring it in.
No,
Mr. Landers? Can you comment on that?
Yeah,
He's going to answer the question about how much material they have.
a large portion of that pile was put in that hole that was there. We still have some left, whether there's enough or not. I can't answer that question. But a concern I would have with putting the dirt in there and getting it compacted down along that wall it could cause you some issues. I can't say it will or won't, but that would be a concern of mine.
it
Ms.
would
Rolfs?
cause what?
Some structural issues.
Compacting the
That's what
dirt
Which one
along.
is more stable? Which would stabilize the
The
situation?
flowable fill would stabilize the foundation part of that wall. And if you put the dirt in against that wall, then I would be a little concerned, but just me thinking out loud, that trying to get that dirt compacted and in there could cause some issues with the wall.
Ms. Rolfs?
My
Anything
original
else?
question was going to be, who owns that building?
I don't know who the current owner is. I believe there's a sale in process for it, but I don't know the details of that. I mean, we could look it up on tax search.
It seems as if though, if there is a person that owns it, that they should be taking part of the obligation in taking care of some of these things, rather than relying on the city to do that.
So, going back to the beginning of the project, the reason the city got involved was from the safety aspect of it. I believe the recommendations that have been brought forward are to finalize the safety concerns with that wall and make that sound so that regardless of what happens in the future with that lot, which we've talked about some ideas, Mr. Reimer and I talked the other day about it, it provides some stability based on what has been recommended, and that's my understanding of it. But I agree that there's a difference of opinion here, so that's why the council is having that discussion.
Has anyone discussed this? I mean, if somebody else owns that building and we're willing to go in and do a number of things to make it more stable, why is that person as the owner not involved in this conversation?
West,
Hold on a minute.
But the only reason,
it-
the only reason it's unstable is because we dug the hole next to
Hold on.
it.
It's not unstable. That word shouldn't be used. That building is not unstable. That is a false assumption.
when I
Looked at the
when I
foundation,
use
it's
the
not
word
unstable.
when I use the word stable, I mean I think the idea is that anything could over time become unstable, correct?
Well,
and I think it was shoring up and providing some reassurances about the stability of it. I didn't mean to imply that it was unstable.
The motor's intact. If you go up and look at it, the motor's completely intact down there.
Okay, so to me, I'm assuming all the water is what's caused our concern? What is causing us concern for that wall being our responsibility?
Because it's never had lateral pressure on it. It's never had earth horizontal this on it, ever.
Well, I understand when there's a fire, a lot of water can go in and
The,
of course it
the
can-
water of the fire was not the concern.
Well, that's
It
not
drained
necessarily true. Because if the building was built from the other direction on, it would have had dirt on it. It depends which direction you built that from. Which corner did they start on building?
Did it go left or
Because
did it go
they
right?
didn't start, they may not start.
Are you asking me the construction of a building that's over 100 plus years old?
Well,
I
no,
do
I'm
not
not.
know that.
No, I know you don't know that. That's the
That's what
problem.
you just asked me.
I know.
Everybody, let's
Well, what I'm
be
saying is,
professional in our
you don't know
conversation,
which-
please.
Which building was built first is what I'm saying, Wes.
The one on the corner, I believe, was built first.
You believe, do you know?
The fire,
Do you know? Yes or no?
the structural engineer did research, and according to them, the one on the corner was built first.
Going from left to right.
The one that burnt down was built first
Okay.
in the mid 1880s.
The Eckert building. Mr. Parrott,
Does a flowable fill, is it waterproof, that foundation?
The wall that was not, the mortar was not in good shape. It is in good shape now because we had it tuck pointed and waterproofed. So that has been done. And like Walt said, when you go in there and drop this dirt in there, you're not just throwing a bunch of dirt in there and walking away. You need to compact it. Even that pressure pushing sideways is scary. And that's one of the first things the structural engineers said, keep them away from that wall as much as possible with their heavy compaction equipment. But that's what we would need to do if we were to put dirt in there.
So then another quick question then. So since that was an interior wall and now it's going to be an exterior wall, if there's any further pressure being put on that wall from water or from whatever over a period of time, and the owner has to go in and have that corrected, I'm not for sure exactly how have it corrected. They can't pier it because it's brick, right?
On the basement side of the other building,
Well, no, on the side that we're going to put the flowable fill is because I'm thinking if they have to go in and waterproof, that whole wall, are they going
Well, in a
to have
perfect
to
in a
tear out
perfect
that stuff
world-
that we put in?
in a perfect world, I would pour a footer, a foundation wall, and block it all the way up. Then you've added an additional wall to this existing wall. That would be if we had all the money in the world, but that's way out of bounds. This is simply a shoring technique.
I'm just asking.
No, I understand.
Check that question.
Mr. Reimer. Sorry, I'm looking up the tax search
Well, for
information.
one,
Thank you.
I can tell you who owns it. I didn't think it was appropriate to say it out loud. It's in the middle of a sale.
It's a matter of public record. Anybody can go on property tax search.
So I
Who's the
spoke
current
with the
owner?
owner today about a different issue, and it is in the process of sale right now. Whether that's hopefully happens or not, I've spoke with the potential owner as well. So anymore, I don't know if those sales are going to happen or not. So
Okay. Mr. Reimer?
Well, for one, there again, I speak from experience because the 3-story building that was condemned and tore down over in Mount Pulaski was the first building built, then mine. Tore it down. I had no pressure. They filled it, actually, it wasn't even filled right. It was filled with brick and dirt because that's how Mr. Coogan did it over there. He crushed it in because I raised hell about that. It wasn't even done right. It has not pushed in my basement. It's been over 25 years. I'm not saying not do something to the wall. For one, tuck pointing, that was a good idea. Why don't we use that tar stuff or whatever? They seal the wall. That'll waterproof it. If you put dirt in there, that's all they did was mine. Put dirt in there, and they didn't compact it. It settled, and they added a little bit later on, I think. That was it. $20,000 for flowable fill? There's no way. I don't see that. And as far as painting, when they got done, they mortared up all the holes. They didn't paint nothing. They left the crap plaster on the walls that falls off every now and again. They did nothing like that for me. And that is just not normal policy. You're talking, how much was it to paint it?
The bid was $28,700. Not
We
just
got
for
somebody
paint.
gonna buy the building, just like I'm doing. I'm painting my own building. Why doesn't he paint his own building? So,
Ms. Rolfs?
I guess I'm at that point where I'm looking at liability. Do we really have any liability? It's not our building, it's not our property, right? So do we actually have liability? I understand, I want to be safe too. I don't want any accidents, I don't want anything else falling down. But if we're in the process of possibly a sale and we don't have any liability, how long, if we tabled this, would we go to make that decision where it's not going to be purchased and we do have to do something to make sure that somebody isn't walking along there and bricks fall on them?
I mean, if you're asking me about the liability, I would defer that question to the city attorney.
Well, I was
He would-
referring it to, I
He
figured
would,
he'd
he would be the
answer.
expert regarding liability.
The question is, do we incur any liability by our action of demolishing that building?
I think
And-
they're questioning the liability of doing the additional work on the building.
Obviously, when you go into a building and you do additional work, you do incur liability if you do not have the permission to be there. I would suggest to the council that before we actually step onto that property and do work on it, that we would get a release of liability of some nature from the person who owns that or will be owning it if the council so desires to undertake said action. Now, in regards to the liability from what has occurred previously, because we demolished a building, okay, the person who is the current the current owner did not, that it was of no fault of their own, okay, from which that occurred. And it was also no fault of their own that the city undertook its remediation efforts, but it could potentially have created a condition that would do damage to the building in the future. There is going to be allegedly a new owner. The new owner would be apprised of what has occurred previously now, what has taken place, and they probably would be taking the building in accordance with eyes, so to speak, wide open, if that transaction still proceeds. So I cannot tell you with any definite certainty, as of right now, if something were to happen in that building, would somebody try to hold the city accountable? My experience, they usually make a request or at least make an attempt. As to whether or not that would win the day, so to speak, in court is a absolutely other question. But at this point in time, for Ms. Rawls, your most immediate question, if you're going to be doing work on the building and somebody else owns it, get the approval to be there to do it, and get any waivers that you can if possible. I would think that if the city is looking to undertake some efforts, like say to paint the side of a building or to shore up the basement, so to speak, so it doesn't push in what we put down in there, doesn't push in against the foundation and push it out, so to speak, then they would probably be more than amicable, for us to come in there and do that. So
So does our expenditure of the possible $60,000 add any more value to that property?
I mean, I don't know exactly what that property is being sold for right now. I cannot speculate as to that. But, I mean, if the question is, if you're going to leave it in a condition from which it is now, or paint it and do these other things, we'll be better off. Yes. It's just whether or not the question is that an expenditure for the citizenry of Lincoln and their tax dollars? That's the question before you.
Any other?
I'm
comments?
sorry, I'm a no vote because this is absolute waste of money of our taxpayer tax dollars.
Well,
So,
what if we consider doing a table of this and find out in,
well, we could fix things. Flowable fill, I'm not going to agree to that. That does not need to be done. I've experienced the same situation 25 years ago. That's just some engineer saying, yeah, that would probably be a good idea. There is no guarantee that needs to be done. That wall is at least a foot thick. At least a foot thick. They all are when they build them up like that. So if you start pouring dirt in there and building it up, I'd leave it 6 inches to foot higher so water could run away from it. It's going to be just fine. And it's the next owner can paint it. I mean, if you want to go in and mortar all the holes shut, I agree with that. I can agree with that. Fine, we can do that. But you heard we've got to get some kind of agreement or liability deal on that. But $28,000 to paint it, for one, it don't cost $28,000 to paint that building. That's ridiculous.
Wes, have you had conversations with the owner of the property? I'm assuming you have, or you wouldn't be asking us to
green
do this
property?
work. Yes.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks. Nothing to do with this.
Are they
situation.
familiar with what this request is?
No, not at all.
Okay.
They were asking about the condition of the building as it sits. It's been some time since they were through it, so they were asking after the fire, what condition is it in now and that sort of stuff, or what we expect as the city if they were to purchase it and so forth.
Alderman Downs, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Just for clarification, Craig, are you're only against the flowable fill
And the painting, because
And the
we
paint.
don't need to do that. I agree, Sam, I agree we need to tuck point and close everything up.
Okay.
They went ahead and tuck pointed the bottom. Good deal. I would even go for an extra, they've got that basement coating tar stuff that you could waterproof below ground level. Get in there and do that.
Sure.
I agree with that.
So the estimate for the was $28,000, and that was only for the painting, or did that include tuck pointing as well? How much is the painting?
That was for the joist pockets, filling in of doors,
I thought that sounded
the
high.
edge
Painting.
edge treatment on the front and the rear. The basement foundation has already been waterproofed, not with tar that you can visibly see, but it's already been waterproofed. So no, it's one lump bid.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Barrett.
Can you explain the treatment on the front and the back? The front of the building and the back of the
there's
building?
the front corners where they were separated,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
the edge cuts.
Further discussion? Ms. Rolfs?
well, are we looking at an alternative? Are we wanting to discuss an alternative of going with filling with dirt and then doing the tuck pointing and that, and how much that would cost?
Well,
Would we need another figure to say this or this?
so the council can do whatever they choose. And Mr. Eimer and I talked about this. But the reality of it is, we have people that are specialized in this. They're the ones that have made this recommendation. And I don't think Mr. Woodhull would have brought this before us if he didn't feel that it was the appropriate course of action for this property. Are there ways to minimize some of the costs? Sure. But also, there is a possibility that the city may end up with ownership of the properties that where the buildings used to be next door, 129, et cetera. So one of the things to consider, I think the council should consider when it comes to the return on the investment of our money, is what does that do to the future possibilities of that lot? Does it make that more presentable for things that may happen on that property in the future? Does it create a better image for people of our town when they come in on the Amtrak? Because that's one of the first blocks they see. There's a lot to consider here, and I know that people are looking just at what's on the paper, but I think I'm just trying to present an option for the other things that might not be in this request. But it's up to the council. You can do what you choose.
Well, we do have an obligation to the taxpayers to make sure that we have thoroughly investigated what is being done, since it is not our property technically. And so it's just, if there are alternatives that would achieve the same thing and save the taxpayers money, should we be aware of that? I guess that's all I'm thinking.
And I wasn't implying that we shouldn't be mindful of the taxpayers' money. That's our job to be so. But aside from Mr. Eimer, who appears to have some experience, do any of us on this council have experience with engineering of buildings enough to make a decision? That's the question. Miss O'Donohue had her hand up, and then Miss McClellan.
So do we need to get some sort of written consent from the people who own the building to actually go in and start doing work on their building?
I think with the flowable fill, no, because that's the property line, so it'd be no different than throwing dirt there, rock, whatever you may be. Anything going up, I can reach out to them and certainly do that. I don't think I'm able to get a hold of them, so I think that'd probably not be a problem.
Miss McClellan.
I was thinking that the building that we're talking about fixing is an insured building, but I think we need to be very careful that we don't get ourselves in the same situation where we have to demolish another building. If the wall falls in, it's like, whose fault is that? So I think we have to keep that in mind too, that because of the work that we did do, that we probably, as our attorney said, we might be liable if something did happen to the wall in the future. Especially if we had structural engineers saying, this is what we know will work. To me, I think we have to consider that, like you said, they are the experts and they have kind of made a determination, so.
Mr. Eimer.
Well, structural engineers can be wrong because when dealing over there, they did not recommend that at all. And I was in a worse situation than this one. And there was never anything mentioned of that. And dirt worked just fine. Actually, they put brick and dirt, which it should have been just dirt. But he crushed the building and pushed it in a hole, which is not a good thing to do. And, they don't know for 100% that that's what it needs. That's just an opinion they're making. It's just an opinion. We fill it full of dirt, the building's going to be sold in a few months, and we're done. We're out of this. We're out. Why would you want to spend another $48,000? We got $60,000 on the agenda, which we can lower, I guess. I understand what Kevin's philosophy was on that. But this is $28,000. Okay, so let's say we paint it. Then the building's got to be tore down. Now we've wasted that. There's no guarantee that that building's going to stay standing. And if the next guy is willing to buy it now with it unpainted, then why would we spend $28,000 to paint it? We have an obligation to our taxpayers and money. We were all put in an unfortunate situation, would have to do anything. And we stepped up to the plate. We did what we had to do. Now, we're going way farther than we need to. Fill it with dirt. Fill the holes. As far as the liability thing, they've already tuck pointed that wall without the liability approval. Am I correct on that? Because they already tuck pointed.
Sounds like the base of it.
Yes. So now, where do we stand? That was already done without approval of this liability. So, I think if we just fill it full of dirt and finish the tuck point or whatever, let the person buy it, it's their baby, in my opinion.
Alderman Parrott.
building, and how deep does it go?
A little over 8 foot, 80 foot long.
I think we ought to get them to sign off on any liability, holding any liability against us, no matter we put dirt in or if we put flowable fill in, because if you're going to be in there, whether you put the compacting in or whatever.
And that wall is a shared foundation wall. You know, we didn't take the building that was on fire. We didn't take its foundation. You know, they share that wall. So
I thought it was the recommendation of our attorney. Did you recommend that we do that?
I think going to the north, or I'm sorry, going upwards
Going
vertically
upward.
from that grade. You know,
So do we need to separate this out and maybe approve either or not approve the flowable fill and then get the approval, them signing off on the upper part of it?
I don't think it would take me a day to get that accomplished.
You could approve it contingent upon that.
Okay, but we have $60,000, and so far I've heard 48,000. That's what the two expenses were? Is that right? 28,000 for the paint, 20,000 for the flowable?
48,700
So I don't understand why we would go up to 60,000.
contingency. It was recommended, every project has issues that come up. Even the painting project in this building had things that were unexpected, and a contingency was built in. So it's pretty standard to go about 10% on contingency. And I believe it was Mr. Bateman that made that recommendation last week, which is why it's at 60,000. That doesn't mean it can't change. A motion to amend can be made.
How much have we spent so far on the fire, do we know, with what happened over there? Do we have that total expenditure so far?
The
106,000.
106?
That's after the insurance payment was received.
Correct.
We spent 106.
Correct.
So whether we,
Well,
well, it doesn't matter what we approve. We don't have to approve any of it. I mean,
Originally-
we just be spending taxpayer
So
money like that.
originally the contract price was $210,000. Since that time, we approved that with no hope that we would see an insurance payment, but we did. So we've received a check for $109,000 to offset that amount. So I think that's why and plus some other things have come up. So I think that's why Wes says it's at, what'd you say, 106?
106 is what we are into it at the moment.
Okay, so on this form that we have,
I mean, you were a very big advocate for Jaron because Jaron Industries.
Yes, he did a
And,
fabulous job.
and they're the same people that would do this work. And I don't believe they went over on their estimate, did they, Wes?
So
No, I
So,
don't either. I'm not
yeah.
saying that. I'm just saying we don't need to do this extra, in my
And
opinion.
that's up for the council to decide.
We don't need, I'll argue that all the way to.
Okay, so I think everybody should be at this point, in an understanding of where each of you stand on this topic. Okay, I've heard some other things about doing additional research. Mr. Woodhull can keep me honest, but I believe some of these things are time critical that need to be done. If nothing else, the foundation part of that needs to be addressed. If a council member wanted to make a motion to amend this, they certainly can do it, or we can put the entire request to a vote and see where it falls at that point. Those are your options.
I'd like to make a motion to amend it,
To what?
to amend that we don't need the flowable fill or the painting.
Well, so you'd like to make a motion, so the painting is not broke down, so what would you set your amount at?
Well, see that, I don't know what the tuck point was,
may I ask him one more question? We
Ms.
all
Ross.
got this in our packet, right?
That's what I'm looking at,
Okay,
yes.
the figures that are here. It's got the plus sign, which I assume means we still owe that, the 200,000, 210, we can kind of lay that on the side.
Well,
So the waterproofing, have we paid that 6,000?
yes.
Okay, that's been paid.
The two items that this request encompasses is item number 3 on that list and item number 4. The flowable fill wall shoring of 20,000 and the rehabilitation of the exposed wall, which would be filling in the brick holes, doing tuck pointing, the painting as proposed, that's the $28,700. Mr. Woodall, is that correct?
So the tuck pointing and painting is figured in together?
At $28,000.
In my opinion, I think we need to separate that.
28,700.
Mr. Rolfs?
28,700.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, my motion is to, instead of flowable fill, which is 20,000, put in the clay dirt. And then we would have to re-amend if the tuck pointing and the painting is all wrapped in one. I agree with the tuck pointing. Well, I would say we'd have to separate that, go back to the table on that. If we get the dirt in and get that part solved, we got a little time for the rest of it. That building, trust me, ain't gonna come down anytime soon. It ain't. So, this isn't that critical that we have to do like this, so.
And so the dirt is just is not quite as sturdy, or is as sturdy as it?
It's just like anything. I mean, you put dirt around all house foundations, building foundations. That's all they used to do. I mean, this is just an extra precaution that they think they might need. It's an opinion. It's not a guarantee. It's just.
Do
we
they
don't need
use
to be
that
doing
basement? Is there a basement, is it used there?
Nothing's used there.
There's nothing, okay.
No, it's empty.
Mr. Parrott?
Is there, come back to me.
Mr. Bateman?
Off the top of your head, do you know what we spend annually on the engineering firm that we hired?
Ooh, I don't have that number on the top of my head.
It's a lot of money though, right?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we take their advice? I'm not understanding it.
Because they're giving an opinion.
Well, look,
They're not, just because you pay them X
I
amount
mean-
of dollar doesn't mean that they're always right, Kevin.
Well, I would also say, and please don't take this the wrong way, Mr. Eimer, but you're providing an opinion as well.
Yes, you're right.
So-
I've experienced it.
I know.
That's where I'm basing my opinion off.
Okay. Mr. Parrott and then Mr.
I
Hoblet.
remember, thank you. Do we need an additional quotes for this, or what's the threshold for a project that the city's gonna to endeavor? Do we need more than one quote for this?
Well,
It was,
yeah,
Mr. Woodhull.
They're different projects, right?
Well, they're already there, mobilized.
change
But I'm
order.
just
done all the
asking.
other work.
Let me ask our lawyer, our attorney, John. Do we need to get more than one quote for this project?
I mean, if you're looking to,
Or is
the,
it a
the
change
quote
order?
the quote could change. You know, if you're looking to parcel things out, to which when a crew is going to have to come back one day and do a set of projects, and then you approve a later, you know, if you look back something you parceled out, well then they have to come all the way back and do it all over. You know, do some other projects. The quote might change. You know, with the quote I'm not an expert in regards to building maintenance and building codes. Well, building codes, yes, but like, you know, in regards to actual construction of buildings and maintaining them. But I would think that for someone who's going to be doing the work, they charge by the hour, and they come and they do the work, and if they come back again, you know, instead of taking care of it all at once, it's going to increase the price. And just to say, Mayor, you know, in regards to earlier, what Mr. Bateman mentioned, you know, the people we hire, they are experts. You know, you guys rely. You know, one of the things I do via my contract is I give you legal advice, and advice you can refer to it as an opinion, but I hope you guys think of me as an expert, and therefore you rely upon my advice. You should do the same for your engineers as well, who are experts, and you would rely upon them. Now, as we're not infallible here. No one's infallible. But if you're going to be parceling things out, I would think that the prices might change. Mr. Woodhull would be a better idea. I believe he has a construction background, and he could probably inform you as to how that works. So if we got a bid for something here, and you're looking to change it up, you might have to rebid it So
Or, I'll throw this out there, can this be looked at as a change order for the original project?
in my opinion, you have the original project that you approve. This this could be inferred as a significant differentiation. Like Mr. Woodhall, when you went out for bid for these, like how many bids did you get?
I don't remember.
3 or
now.
4, wasn't it?
No, it was more than that. It was 7 or 8, I believe.
Well, and also, the reason
But for the original project, and then I mean, yeah, I would, if this was approved tonight, I would categorize it as a change order to the original contract.
the reason why I brought up the change order is because when the project was proposed, the wall was not exposed. The ground was not exposed. And that's typically change orders in a project. You don't know until you get into the project the things that you're going to have to deal with. At least that's been my experience working on the $16 million sewer project and Chicago Street. I mean, other projects, that's been typical in those instances. That's why I brought that up. Mr. Hoblet.
So the work that's being, these price quotes that you got for the flowable fill and whatnot, this was a new bid that went out, or was this just
This was a request to Jaren.
okay?
So
And to the
And I
mayor's
can see the way that you have phrased it here, that if the original contract price was $210, and we did get that insurance payment, I suppose there's an argument to be said it could be considered a change order because it's still with underneath that $210 price.
Yeah, absolutely.
Understood.
Ms. Rolfs?
I think the only thing that I'm having a concern about now is if the cost looks like it's $48,700, we're willing to put out another $11,000 just in case?
What happens if you get into the project, given the conversation we just had, they get into that wall and they run into something else? Then they've either got to stop the work and come to me and ask, or they've got to come back to the council and get approval from the council, which is typically a 2-week turnaround, depending on where you're in the cycle. It could be 3 weeks. So
I just think that's a lot of contingencies, about a fourth, fifth.
Why such a hurry? They can't even really tuck point or paint for another 2 or 3 months. It is January or February.
how did they tuck point the basement?
Well, they can do some tuck pointing. Let me rephrase. But the painting, you got to have certain temperatures for that. I mean, you're not going to do much painting in February and March. So that's all I'm asking. See?
I mean, I agree, but your peers on the council are the ones you have to convince because they're the ones that'll ultimately vote. I only vote in the event of a tie. So, any further, Ms. Ross? I get what you're saying about the contingency, but again, that was just a number that was put out, and the council said it's okay to put it on the agenda. If you want to change that contingency, you can. It's at the will of the council, Mr. Reimer.
How many bids did you get for the flowable fill?
1. I reached out to Jaren Industries for all of this. They were contracted to do this work. Then and our engineers sat in this room and you all questioned him, what about this? What about this? He said, we do not know that until this building is gone, which is true. We can't see that wall. We can't see the foundation. Everyone can understand that. He sat right in this room and said, we simply don't know. Once it was safe to go in there and actually investigate it further, we were able to come up with what you see right now, and that's where these ideas came from, that, well, that's exposed dramatically. We need to do something about it.
Well, do you know how much flowable fill is a yard right now?
I can't
And I
answer.
dig,
Is it 120 in it somewhere in that range?
I know concrete's around 150
Andrew,
something.
120. Wes, do you know how many yards of flowable fill they recommended?
I did the
See,
math
that's
a
what
while.
I'm saying. The contractors inflated the price.
Why ask a question if you're not going to let me answer it?
Hey, let's all treat each other with some respect here. Okay?
You don't know what you're doing.
Everybody. Well, I would assume that if Jaren came up with a $20,000 price, they took the cost of flowable fill into consideration for the volume they needed, which is where they came up with that price. Now, if you believe they overinflated it, I guess that's a whole nother topic, but Jaren Industry has been very good and very responsible on this project. I mean, to your own point, you've stated in these meetings that you think we made the right decision with Jaren.
I understand that, but for one, it still didn't need flowable fill. I'm telling you, the dirt will work, and we've got it, and it's free. This is a $20,000 expense we don't need to spend.
Okay, so,
Do what you want.
and Mr. Parrott, did you have another question?
Did they say when they could start on this project?
I'm to respond to him as soon as this meeting is over.
And then they would start if it was
Hopefully, weather permitting, today, very nice. The rest of the week is iffy, but I told him I would respond to him as soon as I walked out the door tonight. And I did give their bid to our engineers, who did the math as well and agreed that the cost was not overinflated.
Okay, so that being said, coming back to Mr. Eimer started to make an amendment. Would you still like to make an amendment or not?
I'd like to make an amendment that we do not use flowable fill and we do not paint the building. That we finish the tuck pointing like we started, put the clay dirt in, and walk away and let the building sell. That's my
So
amendment.
if I had to paraphrase your amendment then, your amendment would be to approve this request minus the cost of the use of flowable fill and painting the building. Is that accurate?
And instead of flowable fill, put in clay dirt.
Okay. Is there a second?
my only thing that I have hesitancy on is that the painting of the building when they can apply for a grant and use some of those funds. Now they're still city funds, but they're going to have to put some of their own money into it as well. I don't know about the flowable fill and dirt. I'm just that I don't know. I don't have that expertise.
Okay. There's still a motion on the floor for an amendment. Is there a second for Mr. Eimer's amended motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Alderman Parrott, second the amendment to the motion. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call on the amended motion that's on the floor, please.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Downs,
No.
Mrs. Rolfs,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donohue,
No.
Mr. Eimer,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
No.
Mr. Sanders,
No.
Mrs. McClellan.
No.
And what was the final roll call on that? For the record? 5-3?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion fails. That comes back to the original item on the agenda. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a, Ms. Rolfs.
I only have one question. I feel that the citizens put a lot of trust in us, and we're then saying that we have to put a lot of trust into what we've been presented. And if this doesn't go well, then, I guess I don't know that I know all the information that I feel like I need to know, Tracy.
And that's fair. That's your position to take on that matter. But I would also say that this is why we have experienced department heads. This is why we pay engineers. This is why we bring in the experts to advise us on things that we don't know about. I don't have experience on flowable fill. I don't have experience with construction. And so when I have questions, I typically go to Mr. Woodhull or somebody that does. So I'm not trying to sway or influence you in one way or another. I'm just simply saying that's something that we should take into consideration.
Well, when you give somebody like $11,000 contingency, you have to trust that company to not feel like they're gonna go in and, we can put in a couple extra hours here, this, that, and the other, till they get that, most of that contingency.
I would just throw this out there. How much do you think contingency was on the combined sewer overflow project? Way more than $11,000.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah. But the bigger
Hundreds of
project,
thousands.
too.
Yeah.
That was a huge project, yeah.
Mr. Bateman.
My opinion would be the same no matter what ward it sits in. But I did have several people reach out to me that live outside Ward 3 and a lot that reached out to me that are in the downtown area. And the question was, how long are we going to have to look at another eyesore? So to me, the painting, making it all look the same is important because we don't know how long the building may stand forever. We've already tore down one building and we'll have an empty lot to look at. So that's, I wouldn't want, no matter what ward it's set in, I would consider what the citizens have to look at. And, we're well under what we proposed to spend for this project totally. And I just would like to make it right.
Mr. Hoblet.
I would only request of the council that you make this approval contingent upon consent of the owner and
Correct.
release of liability, favor of liability.
What did he say?
He recommends that we make it contingent upon a release of liability from the owner of the property. Mr. Ross, did you have further conversation,
Well, I
discussion?
know there's been comments out in the public about this. I know a lot of people feel like we have spent a lot of money. Now, again, we've looked at the safety issue here and what's pretty well best for anybody that would be downtown. So there are a lot of opinions about whether or not we have already spent enough money, not spent enough money, and what we need to do. So considering what he said, there are a lot of other opinions also out there. Okay.
Mr. Conzo, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just regarding the contingency, and I think someone said usually have a 10% contingency built in. This appears to me, well, it's a 23.3% contingency, which seems to be a bit high.
It can be changed.
I move to make it 10% contingency.
Okay, so, Mr. Parrott, did you have something, Mr. Hoblet? Well, I think we're gonna have to amend the overall amount here through an amendment because the request on the agenda was for the 48,700, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? So if we're gonna change it to 10% contingency, that means you need to bring that down to, can someone do the math real quick? It's about $4,700, right? I'm sorry, Ms. Rowe? Okay. So someone will have to bring an amount, or make an amendment not to exceed that amount.
I move to make the contingency,
Or the overall agenda amount, the not to exceed amount.
we've got one on the floor.
52,800, I think. 52,800.
That's right, yeah. Which was how much,
We'll
Tricia?
go with your number, Chuck.
He said 53,570.
Was
That would cover the work requested plus 10%. Would be for a total of $53,570. Is he gonna do the math real quick?
He said to go with Chuck's number.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Sanders, will you rescind your second, and then Mr. Parrott, can you rescind yours and then make a new amended motion for that specific amount, please? 53,700 or $53,570.
and I rescind my first, then I make a motion for the total dollar amount to be $53,570.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Alderman Parrott made the amended motion. Alderman Sanders second that. Discussion? Okay, roll call on the amended motion, please.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Rolfs?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donohue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer? Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on this agenda item before we do a roll call on the actually, we need to, how do you want to do that, John? Do we need to make an amended motion to state the original amount as amended to include the contingency? Or not the contingency, the contingency on the liability waiver. Please, can you please provide a recommended motion for that?
I would say, ask the council amend the agenda item to be approved in accordance with approve the amended amount contingent upon release of liability and consent of the property owner.
Okay, do we need to have a second for that one?
Nobody made a motion, so
Well,
I would request it.
If someone will make that motion. That
I'll make the
city-
motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, Ms. O'Donohue made the amended motion. Mr. Sanders, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Ms. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Rolfs?
Yes,
Mrs. O'Donohue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
No.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Okay. Any further amendments? Okay, if there are no further amendments or discussion, we'll take the roll call on the agenda item as amended through the previous votes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Mrs. Rolfs?
yes,
Mrs. O'Donohue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
No.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, the next item up on the agenda this evening is item number 9, approval of annual audit for fiscal year 2023 through 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
Alderwoman Rolfs made the motion. Alderman Downs, second. Further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Rolfs?
Yes,
Mrs. O'Donohue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Ms. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us down to announcements. I have no announcements this evening. Does anybody have an announcement they'd like to make? Ms. Rolfs and then Mr. Conzo.
I just had a question. Last week, we had the discussion about moving a part-time employee to, or a full-time employee to do a part-time job with the fire department. Did we have to have any language or any documentation somewhere that would say how much time that would be? I'm not sure if we have to change her job description. If we're
Not at
going
the-
to approve her job description eventually, in a rating of some sort, do we have to have a job description to have that in there?
I don't think so at this time because it's really us trying to figure out how she can help the fire department. We anticipate it'll be around 25% of her time, but until she gets into the role and her and the chief work through what those duties look like, I think it would be a little premature to change the job description. But we most certainly should at a later time if this proves to be fruitful.
Okay, well, because I've heard some rumors about somewhere else where they didn't approve an employee and there's problems. So I want to make sure that we've got
No, we're just utilizing existing
I's
employees.
dotted and T's crossed.
Mr. Conzo.
Just a reminder to everybody that it's now that time of the year from now through February 20th where our sewer customers can pay a year in advance and receive a 10% discount. We've been very well received each year since we started doing this, and I can tell you from being in the building today, the phone never stopped, did it, Madam Deputy City Clerk? And we had a couple hundred, as I understand, or no, 113, yeah, and that's just to start with, and we still have several days to, couple of weeks to go. But it's a great program, and anyone who can, I would certainly recommend that they utilize that.
Thank you. Any other announcements from anybody? Okay, if there are no further announcements, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Alderwoman O'Donohue made the motion to adjourn. Alderman Parrott, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 7 p.m.